I was sent this Reddit link via the WhatsApp group that I'm a part of. And I will tell you, this is probably the closest to the truth that we're going to get. Because based off of interviews that Justin Baldoni has given, I think even though it might be hard for him to hear that he came off as inexperienced and all that stuff, I think there's a part of him that probably would agree. Like, this was the first big movie he was involved in, because all of his other movies have been smaller. So even though it was still a small budget in comparison to a lot of things, this was still a big project. So this is what this Reddit post says, and I'm more apt to agree with it. Information from the set of It Ends With Us. I'm starting this post by saying I have no interest with convincing anyone or arguing with anyone on whether this information is true or legit or not. I believe my source, so I wanted to share. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, I have a source who worked on the set of IEWU, and this is what I was told by them. Justin is inexperienced and kind of an idiot, was the first thing they said, which to me were fighting words, because I went, what do you mean by this? He is a sexual predator. And they go, oh, no. All that is BS. But the man does not know what he is doing or how to direct the set whatsoever. He had no idea what he was doing, which actually lines up with another source that came out. I think it might have been the Rolling Stones article or something that gave the same sentiment, that he was over his head. He did not know what he was doing. Basically, my source said this set was one of the worst run sets they had ever been on, because they felt Justin had no control over the cast and crew, and there was no sense of authority or backbone about him. My source said he was frequently asking key crew members their thoughts about direction, certain scenes, which took them by surprise, because technically the director shouldn't be asking for others' advice on their vision for the scene. They said he came across as very green and just overall not very experienced, which again surprised me. Maybe I shouldn't be that surprised to hear this, given how Blake bulldozed them and got her way, hijacking everything. But my source said they were not surprised, because it sounds like he was asking for advice, thoughts from both the crew and the cast while they were on set, and like he didn't have a clear direction vision for lots of scenes. Oh my word, I will tell you, there's a specific quote from Justin Baldoni where he's like, sometimes I like, basically he said he failed to communicate sometimes his vision, that sometimes people thought he had no vision at all, which really tracks with what this is saying. They said he was an incredibly nice guy, but came across as a bit naive and not ready necessarily to be directing a feature film of that caliber. They said they were not surprised whatsoever that Blake ran circles around him. As for the production itself, they were behind basically from day one and on. And I mean, again, these text messages between Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively make that very clear, that there were issues with what do you call it? It was, he would just call it like it was a tough day, you know. And she would say, she goes, you're in the same boat as me, kind of situation. The days would run way over schedule and over budget, and that all crew members were racking up OT, which made everyone very annoyed, frustrated from the get-go. My source is very close to the first set of ADs, first and second team that were hired for this job, and they went through 3 sets, which is unheard of, which I believe that is the case, because when you look at that It Ends With Us IMDb, you would see that I believe I did see 3 sets of ADs. Blake allegedly fired 2 sets before the final set came in. More on that later. And it sounds like they tried their best to run a tight ship and keep everything on schedule, but between Justin not being 100% ready with direction for each scene and Blake always running late, being behind, they said 90% of the time it was her fault. They were running behind each day, and it was like poking the hornet's nest when trying to get her out of her trailer if she wasn't ready because of hair, makeup, wardrobe issues, or something wasn't to her liking. So lots of 16 to 18 hour days for the crew. Everyone was very exhausted and frustrated the whole time while filming, and it sounds like a lot of them blamed the ADs, Justin, for not reining in Blake, or the producers for not having a chat with Blakey, since she was the main problem regarding going over budget because of OT hours and running behind, needing to add extra days' time to the overall shoot schedule. My source said Blake, hands down, is the worst person both they and their AD friends have ever worked with by far. Just a miserable person who takes her misery out on others. I don't need to go into detail here, most likely, but essentially everything you've heard or read is true, and then some extremely insecure and will take out her emotions on everyone around her. very threatened by attractive females or anyone who takes eye contact with her the wrong way. Very insecure about her body, wardrobe, how she looked the entire time, which made them run behind most days since she was in most scenes. Very, very, very negative energy. Apparently, Justin was terrified of her, as were all the heads of each department, to the point that all the department heads would filter their comments, concerns, feedback, issues through Justin to communicate to Blake because they were terrified of her. She did make people cry on this set too. So he had to constantly waste time doing other people's jobs, being the messenger, because they were too afraid or were worried they'd be fired if they told her to adjust, change something. Which stressed Justin out too, it sounds like. I genuinely believe that man was full of anxiety every day and just overwhelmed. Because I'm trying to be fair, he was also acting. Directing acting is not easy. And he was also doing a lot of other jobs, wearing hats, because it sounded like no one wanted to deal with Blake directly, LOL. Blake got 2 sets of ADs, first and second fire. There were 3 total, oh my word, I hate it when this record button, I can't read what it says. Something in total over the course of the shoot. Why? She blamed them for why production was behind and why the studio was losing money. Oh, there were 3 teams in total over the course of the shoot. Okay, got it. And why the studio was losing money, since ADs are in charge of running the schedule. Which is true, but girl, it sounds like you were the problem, but no one would stand up to her and rein her in, which it sounded like was desperately needed. My source was particularly close to the first AD that began working on the shoot at the start. It's a female, and Blake apparently was so nasty to her. Apparently she's a somewhat attractive female and very, very professional, experienced, that she considered leaving, but wound up being fired instead. I asked time and time again, is there any chance sexual harassment or anything creepy or untoward was done by Justin or anyone on the set? And they kept saying no. Apparently when the New York Times article dropped, my source and other people and friends they had kept in touch from the set were all texting each other like WTF, because they felt completely gaslit and were questioning their memories of certain scenes she described in her complaint and thinking, hey, that's not what happened, or that's not how it went. A lot of the ADs involved felt sick to their stomach and scared, worried that they never be hired again, given the allegations made, because it made them look incredibly unprofessional / terrible. That behavior was in fact occurring, and they did nothing. There was a lot of of group chatter amongst the crew that went around via text, but the overall consensus was confusion, shock, and struggling to try to recount any possible moment where Justin could have said or did anything to anyone on set that made them feel uncomfortable. But the general consensus was absolutely not. Blake is is a effing crazy. Why is she doing this? And just general panic, confusion, and fear for their own careers, livelihoods, and getting hired again. I also asked about pushed for, was there an affair? My source said not that they knew of, unless something went down in their trailers or Blake's penthouse when no one else was around. They said their honest impression of Justin was that he was a nice guy and overcompensated in huge ways to make Blake happy, and was always complimenting her, smiling, etc., to be nice to her because it was better for all of their sakes if she was in a good mood, and Justin picked up on it early on. My source personally thinks, as do the ADs, that Justin was terrified of her or making a mistake / making her angry. And they personally did not get the sense from Justin that he was very attracted to her, only that he wanted her to like him and behave. Edit, a little more information I forgot to add. Another thing my source said when I was asking about the rest of the cast, their dynamic, they felt like any other actor who was a part of the main cast, like Jenny Hassan, I forget his name, etc., might have lost a bit of respect for Justin for just not having an air of authority around him and treating them more like friends than a director, professional, and having control over them. Edit number 2. Oh, one other thing. My source did mention Ryan's presence on set, which everyone was weirded out about. In Video Village, that's the area where all the directors, producers, writers, if present, ADs sometimes are hanging out, watching the monitors of what's going on, etc. Also, important guests of honor will sit there. Essentially, everyone who is important is given their little folding chair. Sometimes cast members will be there too in between sets, and if they don't want to go back to their trailers and such. Okay, with all that said, out of everything I've heard, this is the closest to the truth I think it is. Honestly, y'all, I think this is it.